So you're working on your game, you've downloaded a nice asset pack, and now you have hundreds of textures that need to be inside materials. And maybe you've set up your pipeline correctly. You have a nice master material, you've got some inputs. You've got diffuse, roughness, normals, all that sort of stuff. But now you've got an asset with all those three textures, and it needs to become that one material instance. This is a problem I faced just a few days ago now while working on something for my game design students. I'm building this little modular house pack based off of Kenny's assets, which I'll link down below. So I really wanted to use these low poly, like retro style textures because I'm building like a stealth game with my students. And it's like 127 textures, and it's a really simple material. There's no normals, there's no nothing, but I wanted a really quick way to swap out materials so that I could take the little modular piece and change what kind of a wall it is, if it's brick, wood, or whatever. And so trying to build those material instances by hand is something that I just don't subscribe to. I'm a technical art director and I build tools for a living. And so automation is my jam. This was a great opportunity, I think, to show you some of the really cool stuff that you can do and how tools actually make game development a lot easier. This is what studios do, and this is Hard Edge. Let's dive right in and let's build something cool. So here we are in Unreal. This is our setup. And what I wanted to do is just give my students something really quick to be able to ideate their environments with. It's a game design course. I teach them a lot about coding, but I also want them to make interesting little levels and build their own game ideas. And so sometimes it's really hard to find the right asset pack. And so we built them these 3D models because the textures that come in this pack, which you can see over here, they're just textures. It's a 2D asset pack. It's great, but yeah. So what I wanted to do is I want to be able to say, well, actually, this door should be wood, and I want to be able to drag that in there. And I want to say, oh, actually, let me change this wall to be this structure timber. Oh, let me change that one too. Actually, I changed my mind. And I think it's a really convenient thing to sort of do by having all of these material instances. This is the sort of problem I wanted to solve. I just want it to be super quick and easy, drag and drop, really modular, really nice. And then you could take a building like this, you could convert it to a packed level actor, for example, and then it would instance all of the pieces. So then you're paying less cost for the draw calls. And, there's all kinds of optimizations you could do here. You could take all of the door textures and put them in an atlas and then build a tool that just kind of swaps custom primitive data by moving things around so that, a specific door can be any of the doors. And then you just use a tool to kind of move the CPD around. Loads and loads of things you could do, but the basic gist of this tool, what I wanted to really fix is this problem of I have so many textures, I have this one material, it's really quite simple. It's a master material that just has a little bit of work on the tiling, and this work that I'm doing on the tiling, well, it's mostly for roofs, like for roof pieces and roof textures. There's like a few of those, and the floor if I wanted to like tile the floor a little bit better. So it's really just for that. But really, the main thing I want to do here is for every one of those textures, I want to change this texture parameter to be that texture. But it's not that simple, right? Because you want to build the material instance, but you want to name it correctly so you know what you're using. And so you want to name the material instance after the texture. So you have to create the material instance, rename it, then click the tick box and then drag the texture into it. And it's like, oh, that'll take forever, right? Like imagine how long it would take you to take 120 textures and make a material instance for each one of those. So let's begin. We want to right click and make an editor utility, and we will use a editor utility widget, and we want it to be a grid panel because I just want to stack a few things on top of each other. We're going to call it editor utility widget demo, and we're going to open it up. The first thing that we want to add is a special sort of widget called a property set or property view. And this property view, I'm going to rename it to be called material property view. And if you have a look, we've got this undefined object at the top of our little grid panel. A grid panel is something we can use to shift things between rows and columns and just kind of build a nice little stack of things. So the first thing we need to do for this property view is we need to set the object that it belongs to. And because this is an editor tool, everything I want to do needs to happen in editor time. I have to have these things constructed while I am in the editor, not in game or anything like that. So I want to make sure that we're doing this in pre-construct. This is something that's important to know about widgets, and pre-construct is only really relevant for the editor. If you don't need to run anything in the editor, don't put it in pre-construct, put it in construct, which is the equivalent of begin play. More on UI in future videos. So the main thing that we want to do for this material property view is to set the object. So let's go ahead and set object like so. And what it wants here is to understand, who does it belong to? Who does this property view belong to? And so we just get a reference to self. This is a very neat thing. I found it in a YouTube video. I'll see if I can find it, and then I'll link it as well, because credit where credit is due. I thought I would have to do some C++ stuff to make this possible, but thankfully that is not the case. So really, really cool. And then the next thing that we want is to set what kind of a property this is. In our particular case, we can't just take a master material and make an instance out of it, unfortunately, in Blueprints, because we have no access to the factories. In order to build a new object in Unreal, you need to use the factory. So every kind of object has its own factory. And so I can't really do that. The only way we can build a material instance in this particular case is to duplicate an existing one. So for that reason, you need to have a material instance constant as your next variable. So let's call it material instance, like so. It is a material instance constant. I have to have a space. And this is the one that you want, because this actually represents the asset in the content browser. Okay, so we're going to combine that and save. And then all we have to do is take this property view again and then set property name. And when we do set property name, we need to pick the name of our variable. And this will effectively define the type, because this is on pre-construct. When I compile this, what will happen when I look into Designer is that it gives us this really, really cool dropdown where we can pick all of the material instances on the project. Super awesome, really, really cool thing. And that's going to allow us to know what is the material instance we're going to duplicate. And so let's go ahead and build the rest of the tool. The first thing that I need is to be able to pick the material instance, so I can do that already. The second thing I need to do is I need to pick my textures. So we need a few things for this. The first thing that we need is a button. So let's get a button, an editor utility button, and we're going to need two of these. So we're going to drag in the button and then drag in another button right here. So drag it onto the grid panel so that it goes where it needs to go. And we can't really see it because it's kind of behind everything. So because this is a grid panel, the way that this works is you need to mess around with the rows and the columns. So in this particular instance, I'll show you if I do column, it goes to the right. So that's not what I want. So I want it to go down in rows. So I want this in row 1, and then this one here, I want in row 2, because that's how that works. And then unfortunately for us, there is no preset where the button comes with any text. So let's add some text to each of these buttons. And what I'd like to do is on both of these, take the font size to like quite low, like 12 or something like that. I'd also would like these buttons here to not be fill. I just want them to be like nice and centralized. So this one here is going to be called select textures. And this one here is going to be called create instances, like so. And this is going to be a fairly naive tool. I'm not going to like do loads of checking or lots of crazy stuff. Like I would build this slightly differently if I was going to build like a proper tool, but for something to fix this problem and to save me time, which it has done, I'm really happy with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself a little bit of padding on both of these just so that it looks a little bit neater. And now we can get going. Always name your variables properly so people understand your code. So let's go ahead and call this the select textures button. And then the bottom here is going to be our make instances button. Cool. So we can take these and we can just link something to when they get clicked. So very, very simple on the select textures. We have to do a couple of things. The first thing we need to do is we need to have some sort of array of textures that we're going to be operating on. So new variable, this is going to be just texture array like this. And it's going to be of texture 2D. We take texture 2D, object reference, that's all we need, transform it into an array. And the first thing we want to do is whenever you're dealing with arrays, you don't want to continuously be adding to them or not managing them properly. So get your texture array and clear it. That's very important. So it's a good lesson to understand when sort of dynamically adding things to arrays like this in modular tools. Very important to sort of always clear your input. So the next thing that we need to do is get selected assets, because assets are content browser actors are inside the level. Here we go, get selected assets. We are now doing this. We do a for each loop here. And this for each loop will give us an object to iterate on and not a specific type of object, which is important for us to define. So we want to cast to texture 2D. And effectively, this already eliminates, like you could select an entire folder, even if it has folders or all kinds of other stuff in it. It has skeletal meshes, static meshes. It doesn't matter. This will filter all of the textures that we want. And then what I'd like is, in this particular instance, what I'm going to do is, you may want to do this differently. I'm going to do add unique. The reason I'm doing this is because if you have textures on multiple different folders and those textures are duplicates, it would make a material instance duplicate for that texture, because you couldn't have the same texture. You couldn't have two textures with the same name in the same folder, but you could do in different folders. And if you selected the multiple folders while you did this, you could run into a problem. And so I'm just, even though I don't have this problem, I'm just showing you that this is a thing. So that's all we do here. We just populate the array. Nothing else needs to be done in this section. The next thing that we need to do is in our make instance button. I'm just going to click it through here and I'm going to go on clicked. Now we need to build our instances. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the asset tools. This is what we need. And with these asset tools, we need to do something called duplicate asset. So we're going to go duplicate asset like so. But you want to do it from like this. There. So duplicating the asset is what we need. And obviously, we need to loop through all of our textures as we do this. So this is going to be the cool thing. So the original object we're duplicating is our material instance, right? This is our property that we're setting. The first thing we need to do is never run a tool unless you've checked everything you have is there. So do an is valid check, because if you don't have a material instance, you shouldn't really be doing anything. So this is a very important like early exit that we need to do. So if we have our material instance selected, that is great. We can get the asset tools and we can start duplicating, because now we know that this is valid and this is the original object we want to duplicate. So as far as package path, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, inside here, I already have all my sort of instances. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a new folder in here. So what's the best way? I'll just right click here, make a new folder, and I'll just say demo. And if I go in here and double click it, I can click the top bar and get the actual path. So I'm just going to hard code it for now. I'll show you the original tool that I have where I actually split the paths and put them into a specific location. I do a little bit of string manipulation, but it doesn't really, it's not really necessary for what I'm teaching you today. And the asset name, now this part is quite interesting. What I want to do here is I want to get the texture, right? So I want to get the texture array. I want to do a for each loop like so. And what we want with this for each loop is just the actual name of this object, right? So let me move this down here and we can make it pretty for now. It doesn't really matter, just so we have a very clear view of what's going on. What we want is to get the display name of this texture, and I would like to append something to this. I want to do mi, so I want to append the string. Now what it'll do is it'll put it at the top as oh, you want to add something to this string, so it puts it as the first string. I'm just going to hold control and move it to B so that it adds, you know, something before it, which is mi underscore. And this will basically take the name of the texture, add mi to it, and that will be the name of our asset. That is basically it. And now what we can do is run the tool and see what happens. So let's do that now. So it's a bit messy, but it doesn't really matter. So let's minimize this. Let's go for where I built the tool. Let us run the Editor Utility Widget. You can see it right here. I will dock it here next to my other one. And I can pick the master material that I have, which is my Global Simple. And what I did is I've already built like a little copy, but I can just build a material instance here by going mi demo, like so. And so I can find mi demo, pick it. Now I want to find my textures. So I go to my retro texture fantasy pack. I can filter through textures. I can do whatever I want. So I'm just going to go all the way down here and just select all of my textures, select my textures. I have no feedback here. If you're building tools, give the user feedback, tell them how many textures you've picked, etc. But now we can just create instances. You can see that it's built a material instance for every single one of those. That's excellent. That's exactly what I wanted. And so what we need to do now is we need to set the texture parameter very specifically. So what we want to do is I'm going to open up the material and I'm going to show you the parameter name, which is really important. And I'm going to have a very quick pause just to say to you, listen, this can be done for anything, not just one texture. So I've called this main texture. That's the parameter we need to set. So we need to create the material instance and we need to set this parameter. But if you had normals, occlusion, roughness, metallic, if you had a packed map, anything you have in your master material setup, if you have the textures and you know what the material needs to look like, what I'm about to show you will allow you to automate your material pipeline. And you can do this for any kind of parameter. Let's say you've detected wood in the name, and you know that any wood textures in your project should not be above this roughness value or below this roughness value. There's so many things you could do with this like little tool that I'm showing you that could become a much bigger tool that's a much more like deeper part of your pipeline. Let's go here into the graph. And now that we've verified that our material instances are working, this material instance now needs to be set with a specific parameter. So set texture parameter. So that's what we want to do. So in here, you can see it's an object reference, which doesn't give us anything. So we need to make sure that this is a casting to material instance constant, which we know is going to succeed because that's what we're duplicating. And then we go and we say set texture set instance texture parameter value. What is the parameter name? It is called main texture. What is the value? Well, it is the texture that we are looping through right now. There you go. And we can compile and save. And this is where if you were doing it through, say, multiple textures, like 3 of them, let's say you make a tool that goes through three textures at a time only, right? Instead of like a whole folder like I'm doing, you would then be able to detect the name of the texture and then apply it to the specific thing. There's loads of things you could do here to make this work. So anyway, let's do it again. We've recompiled this here. So we go to demo, pick it. Let's grab our retro textures fantasy here. And we can select all of them, select the textures, create the instances, let it do its thing. And I'll show you, I have a different asset pack that I can use, and I'll be able to create instances for all of them as well very, very shortly. And as soon as this finishes, which should be fairly quick, I mean, look how quick it is. It's what, like 20 seconds of me waffling, talking to you, and then it'll finish. It's super, super cool. So I'll come back when it's finished. Okay, here we are. It was only a few more seconds. So if we look into the demo folder, we have exactly what I wanted, which is this cool idea of, if I drag it onto the right object, we can modularly swap things out, which is effectively the same thing I wanted to do with these modular kits. Like if I wanted like a window, I wanted to do this, and then it would change what kind of a window it is. And then, you know, this is the sort of like the plan for the students to go, here you go, like you can put your little window in there now, like it'll fit, it's fine. And then, you know, just add your texture to it. So you can now find anything that's like a window. And then, you know, I'm sure this one here is fine. Like for example, that one. And then now we have like a boarded up window, which works really, really cool. So I think it's really nice. It's a really easy way to work, and you can build really cool levels like that. So this works for anything. If we go for the retro fantasy kit here that I have, which is another texture pack from Kenny, I believe I can just filter by textures, or I don't even have to, but I will. So these are all the textures that it has. What I can do is do the same thing, select textures, create instances, and it'll build those for those textures. And now in the demo folder, I should have even more brick textures that I can use and, you know, just continue to build. So here they are, for example, these are the cobblestone ones. Like it's not meant for this, for these models, but it would work just fine, I think, if I can get it onto the right thing. And you can see here, we can very easily, place these and do whatever it is that we want. So yeah, that's the tool. And there we have it, another technical art victory in my eyes. And now my students can go in and make their little levels and place all their stuff. And a really cool thing that we built in this little project is we have like this little modular lever system that allows us to turn things on and off at a distance, kind of like Gloom would. So I can sort of highlight things, and it works for different kinds of objects like doors or whatever. Some really, really fun stuff coming in the future. So if you are interested in learning game dev, tech art, or anything related, drop us a line. We're super passionate about empowering people and helping them with their projects, and I love teaching. So really hope this was useful to you, and stay tuned for more. We've got a lot more stuff coming in the future. This is Hard Edge. My name's Felipe. I'm signing out. Bye-bye.